Breaking news here at 7 o'clock tonight, a major development in the search for Nancy Guthrie. Today, the FBI going door to door in a neighborhood about 4 miles away.
The haunting new video out of Tucson showing a masked person with a gun disabling her front door camera. We're there live.
NBC4 News at 7 starts with breaking news.
As we just heard, right now at 7, there is a major new development in the search for Nancy Guthrie. Person of interest has been detained in Tucson just hours after the FBI released those new images of an armed and masked person at her front door. We have that live report from Tucson.
Robert Kovacik is live in Tucson for us with the latest developments for us. Robert.
Michael and Colleen, again, we know that a person has been detained, but that is important to note that they have been detained. An arrest has not been made. Also important to note that the images that were released about 10 o'clock this morning here our time, there is no verification that the person that is right now being questioned and being talked to by authorities is the person that has been seen in the videos. So we have been here outside of the home of Nancy Guthrie. And as you take a look behind me, this home was now the center of the investigation starting this morning when you saw those images. And then the federal agents got involved and the FBI started to canvass not just this area where Nancy Guthrie lives, but let's show you a map. We're looking at two different homes here. Nancy Guthrie's home and the home surrounding her daughter, Annie Guthrie, Savannah's older sister, who lives about 4 miles away, a 10-minute drive. Throughout the afternoon and live on NBC4 newscasts throughout the afternoon, we showed you FBI agents not only going door to door, but you see them, they're in storm drains, they're going through the wash in the neighborhood. These are FBI agents who are knocking on doors with specific questions. Among the specific questions they asked neighbors we spoke to were, can we see your video? Can we see your doorbell video? And one of the neighbors explained that they asked for the doorbell video and they asked him to scroll back, and he was happy to do it, to look for a specific time stamp on that video. His name is Joe Contreras, and we spoke to him minutes after the FBI left.
They're just trying to look in the yards and, see what's going on. And they looked at my Ring cameras on the 31st, see if anything showed up as far as that night. I guess the night she disappeared.
Did they ask you for a specific time?
No, we went through my cameras and we actually found the time. We didn't find any vehicles moving at that time in front of my house.
What time were they asking though, Joe?
What was it, 12 p.m. or something like that on the 31st? Yeah.
In the afternoon?
Night,
12 p.m. at night on the 31st, going into Sunday morning. I see. And then you look at these images, Michael and Colleen, again, released by the FBI today. They are perhaps a glimpse into what appeared to have happened that night to 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie and when she disappeared. As you see there, it's a masked intruder with a slow, deliberate gait, appearing hunched over. It looks like a backpack that may be full, that may be heavy, with reflective stickers on it. And then the person outside of Nancy Guthrie's home obscures the doorbell camera, and those are plants that appear to be pulled out of the ground. Now, FBI Director Kash Patel, who we have been talking about, came to Tucson this week for unrelated business, then decided to get involved here. Today, he is the one who released the videos and the photos. These are images, remember, that were recovered from back-end systems. The camera outside of Nancy Guthrie's home is a Nest camera. It is owned by Google, and according to the Pima County Sheriff's Department, that intruder allegedly tampered with, damaged, or even removed that camera. So it took a while for their backup systems to get these images. Why were these images released? It is because they showed them initially to the Guthrie family. The Guthrie family apparently said they did not know the individual in these images. Law enforcement, especially law enforcement in this area that would be familiar with, quote unquote, bad guys or bad girls, bad women, did not recognize any of the people, the individuals in this. No one recognized the individual. And so it was a decision to make these images public. And as we have been reporting, and as Kelly O'Donnell has been reporting, the FBI is telling NBC News that the tips have increased dramatically. And we are talking about the FBI that has made now wide outreach. Digital billboards going up into major cities in the Southwest, including Southern California. Important to note where those billboards went in Southern California. They went 210 in Irwindale, 91 in Brea, and the 10 in Palm Springs. Important, Colleen and Michael, because these are all arteries and connectors that will eventually get you here to Tucson. And that is where the investigation has centered throughout the last 10 days. And again, we look at the timeline. Nancy Guthrie brought home last Saturday night at 9:30. We reported this morning, NBC News learning that she was supposed to join friends to watch online church services on Sunday, something she normally does. When she didn't show up, that immediately set off alarm bells to friends who called Annie Guthrie. Annie Guthrie, and then called authorities noon on Sunday. So if you go back and you think about what the neighbor told us this afternoon with those FBI agents, the FBI agents asking specifically, show us that Ring doorbell, that Nest doorbell, whatever doorbell camera he had from midnight on Saturday the 31st going into Sunday. So that is where we are right now and where we have just returned from, and why we're standing back at Nancy Guthrie's home, because it was the FBI agents that were combing the area of Annie Guthrie's home in these afternoon hours, and they just left when it got very, very dark. But I do want to point something out. We had heard rumblings when I'm standing here of a number of agents, authorities, investigators heading to a specific location outside of Tucson, perhaps where this person was detained and picked up and brought into questioning. If that is the case, and that was roughly at the same time, it wasn't stopping the FBI agents as we watched them go door to door on their mission. So if they had made it that person and pulled that person over, as we're hearing that possibly at a traffic stop, and that person was now being detained and being questioned, the FBI continued to do their work where we were standing.
Robert, do we know anything about the status of Nancy Guthrie? Any word about whether they found her?
We don't. And that is, I think, why, we look around here and it's somber. It's a little tense, and it has been. We're looking at media from around the world, Colleen and Michael, and, as you take a look at the home here behind me and the driveway, neighbors have come by and they put candles and they put little signs and they're saying, bring her home safe, bring her home safe. But the most important person we're hearing from when it comes to bringing her home safe is Savannah Guthrie. Those are terrifying images. Imagine if that was your 84-year-old mother or your grandmother or your aunt or anybody that you loved, and they were home alone, and somebody showed up at the door in a mask and gloves outside of that person's door, home alone. Terrifying images. But for Savannah Guthrie today, our friend and colleague went on social media immediately after they were posted, and Savannah Guthrie said, we need your help. We believe, looking at these images, she is alive. Bring her home. As of now, we don't know the status of Nancy Guthrie, but the hope here and the hope throughout Tucson, every person we see seems to stop us and ask us and to say, we're thinking of the Guthries, we're thinking of Savannah, and we're thinking of Nancy.
Robert, before we let you go, via our reporting, a person has been detained in the greater Tucson area. No arrests have been made. We obviously want to point that out. So investigators, it will be boots on the ground again tomorrow. This investigation doesn't stop.
The investigation doesn't stop, Michael. They're actually continuing to bring FBI agents in from across the country. 24-hour command post has been set up. But there is so much that remains a mystery, as this has remained a mystery, one that has captivated the United States and captivated the world, because we are talking about a woman who disappeared from her home, possibly abducted from her home. We are hearing about purported notes, ransom notes, given to local television stations here in Tucson. But we're talking about the best in the business. The FBI can't yet, as of last reporting, verify that any of these notes are legitimate and were written by someone or somebody or people that actually have Nancy Guthrie. So with that said, we don't know anything about a possible ransom. We don't know anything about a possible abduction. Today was the big break in the case, and law enforcement experts told us if they are going to find Nancy Guthrie, today was the day where they had to use this as their launching point. They had to use this as the point that they jumped, because you're not going to get a bigger break in the case than this. But there are a lot of questions. There are so many questions that don't have any answers, that just lead to more questions. And as one investigator pointed out to me today and said, you have to look at this, and everyone has to understand that no matter what alleged crime happens, they may seem like snowflakes when you go about looking into them, but look closely. They're not all the same, and everyone is different. Everyone is intricate. Like the tip of an iceberg, it may look like you understand what's going on, but there's so much more going on underneath, and that is what they are trying to find. But right now, for sure, the goal is not to find who is responsible, but the goal is to find Nancy Guthrie and to bring her home safely to her family.
Back to our breaking news. A person of interest has been detained for questioning in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Let's bring in NBC4 law enforcement expert, Dr. Errol Southers. Dr. Southers, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Former FBI, you are. Walk us through what happens once you have a person of interest here.
Well, as Robert said previously, the most important thing is that the investigation does not stop. So they will continue searching. They will continue researching and investigating this matter. They're going to be asking specific questions. And I can tell you, having been there, they're going to ask questions that they, in most cases, already know the answer to see how this person responds. He's a person of interest. They want to know, is he the person responsible for Ms. Guthrie's disappearance, or is he connected to the persons who may have been responsible for her disappearance? So they'll keep searching. What's really interesting is that they were able to release the images, and immediately there was an outpouring of leads. And unfortunately, over the last several days, as you reported, we had some information that there may have been ransom notes. And it's a very unfortunate situation when people decide they're going to do things to provide false leads. So it's good that they stayed on track, they stayed on target. The most important thing here is to determine how far away from Ms. Guthrie's home do you actually consider searching? And it seems like they went in a very wide area, a very wide space geographically, and then were able to zero back in. But thank God for those cameras, and thank God for some really good police work, at least to bring a person of interest in to get some questions answered.
We say a person of interest here, Dr. Southers, but we don't know if this is the person in the video. We don't know what the link or connection is and why they're being questioned at this point. So we talk about the questions that are going to be asked. What are the next steps here for investigators?
Well, the next steps, again, based on some of those answers, if this is not the person, to determine what the nexus is to the person that's responsible. There's a reason they brought this person in. And what they've done is they've taken the video from the home, they've taken the video from the other neighbors, and they've stitched that all together to find out, is there a path of departure? Is there, in fact, other people that were involved in the actual disappearance? Did they drive away? Did they walk away? Ms. Guthrie's 84 years old, and I understand has some mobility issues. So you have to assume that they didn't go too far before there was a vehicle involved. So all of this work now, forensically speaking, is looking at video to see, can they stitch it together to put together a path? And so what happens now, they'll be asking these questions to get some answers so they can at least find Ms. Guthrie. That's the most important thing. If this is not the person who did it, we need to find out who has her and where she is and make sure she's okay.
Dr. Southers, we heard from the NBC News special report that this was actually a traffic stop today. Is it possible they knew what they were looking for and may have been tailing this person?
It's possible. One of the clues we had last week was when they determined that Ms. Guthrie's home was being classified as a crime scene. That was a clue that perhaps they did have some information that they weren't ready to release and didn't want to release because it would compromise the investigative techniques and the strategy they were going to use to try to determine who had removed her from the home. So that traffic stop, I would have to believe, was intentional based on some information that they were able to obtain over the last several days to focus in on that car. And to your question, Colleen, did they tail that car to see where it may have gone? Possibly. But I don't want to get ahead with any speculation. But it seems that they've got the right car. They've got the right person, at least, to sit down and talk to determine, was he responsible for her disappearance, or is he connected to the people who were?
Dr. Southers, one other quick question before we let you go. You've done this for a very long time. When you saw those photos and that video released this morning, did you think this would happen this quickly?
I actually did. This is in the 21st century. We often joke and say it's really hard to hide from law enforcement. And so I actually thought that this would happen. I'm not surprised. And they will find who has removed Ms. Guthrie from the home. I have no doubt about that.
Dr. Errol Southers, our NBC law enforcement expert, we appreciate your time here tonight. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.